You're about to enter a new dimension where boundaries of life sciences, data, and technology blur, and AI reshapes what's possible. Welcome to the ImproZone, powered by Improzo.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time it is. Welcome to the ImproZone. So excited to be back again talking more about agentic and generative AI in the life sciences space. This episode, I have an incredible guest with me who will be, I think, just really interesting to hear his perspective on things. He comes to us today from AWS. I'm sure you've heard of it. And I'm just super delighted to bring Indy Sawhney to the ImproZone to talk a little bit more about AI in the AWS world. Welcome, Indy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jane. It's great to be here. In my role at AWS, I get to focus on helping our healthcare life sciences customers accelerate their AI, Gen AI, and now off lately, agentic AI solutions. So really happy to be here and share my thoughts on what's happening in the industry.
Oh, awesome. And I feel like you have such a great perspective on that with where you sit. So I guess maybe just opening volley question here, when we think about the generative and even sort of as we're tipping into potentially agentic AI, where is that delivering value in the life sciences space from your perspective?
Really good question, right? So I'm going to start with some high-level fundamentals of our industry, right? Healthcare in generally, everyone knows is highly regulated, right? Healthcare is also very complex, right? We're dealing with intricate biological systems, biologics now, small molecules, large molecules, right? Multi-stakeholder ecosystems, and life or death decisions. So it is complex, right? It is also very costly. We spend over like 4 trillion annually in the US alone, with significant inefficiencies in the whole value chain. And most importantly, healthcare and life sciences in correlation with that is very, very personal, right? Every patient interaction matters. Every treatment decision impacts a human life. So as we aspire to go towards the medicine for one, right? Like truly AI kind of helping, assisting humans kind of, with longevity of life and removal of illness and patient healthcare outcomes, right? We're really looking at solving a very complex problem. Now, before I get into how Gen AI, agentic AI is making a difference, I'd like to talk about what is really happening in the human evolution, right? So if you start thinking about the industrial revolution, right, all businesses that got formed, all business processes that got designed, everything was designed around the most precious resource, which is human beings, specialists like you and I, right? And
Right.
others that operate in the life sciences industry. So now think about it, right? All business processes were designed around the immense cognitive load for multimodal data analysis that human beings were trained to do, all the way from their education to how they got told to operate in the work field. Now, since Q4 2022, all of a sudden we have discovered a
Yeah.
transformational technology that can augment this cognitive load almost as a variable cost. Now, think about that for a moment. Think about the impact it creates. For the first time in the human evolution, now we have a technology that can simulate and augment our intelligence and try and help us with some of those business processes, which means we no longer have to accept the business processes the way they were designed when industrialization started. We have now an opportunity to rethink how those business processes should function, at what pace they should function, as we all work together to bring new molecules to market, deliver patient care, and advance the human healthcare.
Yeah. And it
Does
actually
that make
reminds me of
sense?
the metaphor of like the steam engine moving to electricity, right? Similar idea. Like the design of
Very
most
similar.
factories were built on the steam engine, whereas the one central engine kind of powering the entire factory. And now electricity comes along and says, well, you could have individual things on and off, right? They don't have to all be running at the same time. And it took years for people to know how to build a factory with electricity. I feel like it's very similar conceptually, right? Right now, we're just trying to use it the same way we've always used every other tool. And maybe there's an opportunity to rethink it as you're describing.
Exactly, right? So we're talking of a complete transformation journey, right? So every biopharma company, right, will navigate this differently based on their internal organization frictions and their readiness to innovate. So it's not just about the technology per se, that is awesome and still a very nascent technology, but it is also about people process that needs to evolve, right, to kind of make use of this technology. So we have to reimagine everything. So some firms will build internal AI competencies, but a whole lot of other biopharma companies are going to adopt capabilities that allow them to offload undifferentiated workload to AI solutions that can do the job cheaper, faster, better than traditional approaches, right? Let me give you an example, right? Again, from a Gen AI perspective, agentic, I see still a lot of our customers. Some customers are way ahead in their maturity and readiness, and hence they are able to take advantage of that. Others are coming along in this journey. One of my favorite examples is strictly trying to get that patient engagement sorted out, right? So, Jupiter Medical Center, it's a 248-bed regional medical center based out of Florida. They were facing a massive challenge, right? A significant appointment backlog, underutilized radiology services, and overwhelmed call centers, right? So what they ended up doing is, instead of trying to build that competency, they actually went for Amazon Connect, which has Gen AI and now even agentic AI all wrapped in, alongside their Epic EHR, and they were able to get very remarkable results within 3 months. And they were able to get 60% reduction in appointment backlog, appointment wait times dropped from 2 weeks to 2 hours. I'll repeat that, from 2 weeks to
Wow.
2 hours, right? And they created a unified patient experience along their main hospital and clinics, right? So at a very basic level, that's the kind of transformation that we should be expecting, right? Don't just automate existing processes, but reimagine how you can better engage on the edge with your patients.
No, I love that. And I think that, the Amazon Connect example has so many different use cases and applications across the entire healthcare space, right? It's obviously for hospitals, it can also be for pharma companies, medical device companies. There's just a lot of different players that benefit from a more efficient customer interaction process. So I guess, what is the first thing you tackle then when you're trying to figure out those workflows? Like when you work with Jupiter, how did you go about figuring out, to your point, redesign versus kind of, I'm sure the temptation is to just say, can we just modify something we're already doing versus like really rethinking, wholesale what that experience looks like.
Yeah, that's a really good follow-up question there, right? So for me specifically, right, when I start talking to our customers, right, one of the first things I like to remind everyone is about the digital habits of the consumers, right? So we are all adopting some very interesting digital habits, right, over the last decade. Think about how Amazon kind of trained us to reimagine how shopping should happen online, or how Uber kind of helped us reimagine, how we can call a ride, right, as a service, right, rather than as something with a lot of friction in it, right? Our own banking applications have changed. Now, it is the same consumers that have evolved as patients also, right?
Yeah.
As employees working in biopharma companies, right? So, for example, right, I don't need to think anymore about calling a cab company for a ride anymore. I just open my Uber app and get my ride anywhere on the planet, right? Wherever
Right.
I travel, right? And what Uber has done here is remove friction from that journey, making it super easy. Netflix did the same with entertainment, right? But here is what happens, right? When we have to think in terms of a healthcare provider, we all pause. My personal story, right? I deal with seasonal allergies, so do so many others, right? I struggle with it every day, but I do not call my healthcare provider because the
Right.
experience is so painful. I am terrified of how long it will take as the call flow navigates between one, two, three, and then repeating my security, my intent across all the different people that hear me on the call, right? So so that's one problem. The second problem that I feel is, right, why can't my healthcare provider call me proactively when they have gaps in their schedule, when
Right.
they know that I already have allergy, a seasonal allergy problem, right? Why can't they call me and start to remind me? So my point is, that's how I start my conversations with customers, to go like, if you're going to use technology, especially this technology, Gen AI, or agentic AI, you need to start with first thinking about who is your customer and how have they evolved in their habits.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I do think that idea of just the coordination of getting together with your physician is it's funny. I think it's easier for me to book a nail appointment to get my nails done than it is to go to the doctor. That
I
tells you
love that.
something about the process. So the other thing I think is on the pharma side, right? There's a lot of interactions with customers. And of course, and I talk about this a lot, the customer is not really one particular group. There's physicians, there's patients, there's payers, there's policymakers, there's pharmacies, there's right, there's there's a lot of P's usually in the customer set. So in terms of even that interaction between the payer, physician, patient, and pharma, like that kind of little diamond, if you will. What are you thinking about when it comes to that commercial team trying to do something to solve that complexity that comes between the different many customers for commercial pharma?
That's a really good question, right? And I think you're touching on something that we all have been groomed over the years to think about, especially in the commercial line of business, right? For all biopharmas, right? Everyone goes through primary market research business flow, right? It takes months for them to design the survey. It takes
Yeah.
even longer for them to collect all the data, do the survey, collect the data, analyze it, right? By the time they come along to figure out what should be their next best action, how should they change their HCP messaging, how should they go after payers, in trying to make a case for, reimbursement, right? Payout for prescriptions for the patient pool, right? For the members of the payer organizations, right? It's already been such a long time window, right? That passes through. Now imagine biopharma companies have accepted that way of working, not only in a single country, right, but across hundreds of countries where they actually do
Yeah.
business, right? So imagine the amount of time that gets lost, right? And especially when you only have patent, right, protection only for so long, right? Imagine how much of that commercialization time do biopharma organizations actually end up spinning in this exercise, right? And that's where I think a big change can be made using this technology, right? So for example, right, I'm partnering with a large global pharma company that got curious about this specific problem. And what they did is they started thinking about, how can we leverage Gen AI and agentic AI to completely reimagine how do we develop next best actions? Why do we need so much time in between? It's a very gutsy move, honestly, from a leadership perspective that they
Yeah.
started doing, right? So what they did is phase one, again, one big thing that AWS likes to do is always work backward from the customer. And if I'm in the room, I'm always trying to bring some pragmatism in the journey, right? So we broke up the customer journey into two phases. Phase one, when there was no agentic AI, right? But Gen AI was already very promising. We basically worked with the customer and said, why don't we kind of try and bring Gen AI into your data pipeline after the survey is done? So that was phase one, and that was very well received. We were able to analyze the survey data, the PDF file, Excel files, the script, right? Everything to start drafting key insights and recommendations much early in the journey. But then, because we still believe the expertise lies with human beings, not with Gen AI, right? Gen AI can answer the questions that you ask, but if you don't ask the right question, you're going to get a whole lot of hallucination or garbage in, garbage out, right? From that
Right.
perspective.
Or even asking the question in the right way. I think that's another learning curve that
Really
pharma's
big one.
kind of going through right now when it comes to interacting with AI and how to do it. I think sometimes you kind of assume that it will know what you mean, and if you're not specific about what you're trying to do and giving the right context,
Plus
that's
one.
I think how people find it not that helpful or not that effective is it technically is sort of a user error, right? As opposed to a tool not working properly. So that's a good point too, is helping the humans know how to use the technology on top of just the technology being set up properly.
Exactly, exactly. See, everyone talks about human in the loop, right? But what I have realized from my own experiences working with Gen AI, as well as my customers struggling with Gen AI, what I've realized is the human in front of Gen AI is more important. And we don't even talk about it, right? Because if we don't end up asking the right questions, we're talking about prompting, right?
Right.
Only an expert knows what they want from the system. So I think that's how we end up kind of retraining the roles within this business process flows, right? To start asking the right questions to take advantage of this journey, right? So coming back
Yeah.
to the example, right? So we were able to draft key insights and recommendation and hand it back to human in the loop, the experts, right? to help them make sense of it. And it was an iterative development to kind of get it right enough so that they could actually use it to take an action or take some soft actions till the actual business process flow, the old way of doing things, right, continue to come to the point. And why did we do that as our phase one? We did that for our phase one is because we already have control of what that input and output looks like. So that's our benchmark, right? So anything Gen AI does, it can do it cheaper and faster, but we don't know if it is going to do it better till we can start to
Right.
prove that the benchmark, old ways of doing things, and the faster, cheaper way of doing things is at the same par, or even Gen AI is better than the old way of doing things, right? So that's how we actually went through phase one. They're testing it in two countries, right? Two specific markets. And once it proves, I think they'll slowly, iteratively kind of expand it out.
No, I really love so two things you said there that jump out to me. I mean, human in the loop has become another buzz phrase now, but I think human at the front or human first, setting the loop in motion, if you will, is an interesting concept that people probably should be starting to get on their radar screen of like, how did you really initiate the process with the AI? What prompt did you give it to start with, right? That's an important thing in addition to, of course, the loop part. But the other thing I think that it seems obvious, but it's actually probably an assumption that people might be missing, which is the faster and cheaper piece is kind of given, like that happens, just the natural, process of what AI does versus what humans do. But better is still a little bit in the air. Like it isn't
Of
always
course.
better. And I think we're running into a lot of examples, maybe more in the consumer marketing space where it's more visible to more people, where yeah, I'm sure it was cheaper and better to do whatever it was, but or sorry, cheaper and faster, but better. It's kind of awkward. Everybody sort of knows this is an AI thing or AI made this, or this message that you're getting, this email you're getting, right, is an AI generated versus something that a real human wrote. And that actually costs you, even if you saved money on the upfront development. Now people are like, I don't want to respond to that because I think it's AI, it's not real. So that's an important nugget in there that you don't want to lose sight of better. Or I guess the flip of that could be at least as good, but also faster and cheaper. Like at least something like that as a metric is really important too. So in terms of
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
so in terms of
Very
like
well
how
said,
you've
actually.
got this idea, right? You've got like something you're working on phase one. Are you thinking already then about in phase two, like a scale to this? Is that like what comes next? Because obviously this is a pretty focused effort that you're describing.
Yeah. So exactly. And for exactly the reasons that you just called out, Jane, right? So we want to kind of prove that the benchmark, that is the output humans have been creating in that business process flow for primary market research, right, kind of meets that same quality, because
Yeah.
that is the only thing that will give leaders, right, in biopharma to actually go like, hey, now I'm getting the same quality at a much faster pace. How else can I evolve it further, right? So the future vision, right, let's say the benchmarks continue to hold and gets better over time. The future is going to be to pilot out an agentic AI solution that can continuously monitor market signals, regulatory changes, competitor activities, HCP sentiments, from medical conferences, social media discussions, right, what get pushed out in research papers, payer policy updates, right, synthesize all that into real-time market intelligence. But here is the key difference from traditional AI. These agents are not just going to collect and summarize data, they're going to make intelligent connections, identifying those market opportunities, generating specific actionable recommendations for commercial messaging and strategy. But the problem is, right, we have difficulty trying to get human beings to do their job
Yeah.
properly, right? How do you get all these different agentic AIs, agents, right, to kind of do even a more complicated job? So that's why I think the pragmatism needs to come in, right? Reimagine the process, get agentic AI to do it cheaper, faster, but better. And once you have the better conquered, then start reimagining how the new business process could be that could live to that future vision that I just narrated. Because if you don't go step by step, iteratively through this journey, then you are welcoming chaos.
Yeah.
And that's where you lose trust very quickly in these transformation journeys, in my opinion.
No, that makes a ton of sense. And I do think that adoption curve, one of the things that sort of dawned on me lately is for better or worse, I am probably an early adopter. I'm kind of a technophile. I like trying new technology. And I'm starting to realize that there's almost like these echo chamber silos of people who are interested in this and want to adopt it, who are kind of talking amongst themselves about how excited they are about all this new tech. And then you have this other echo chamber of people who are like, this is not that great, right? Like, this is crazy. Why are we doing all this? Can't we just, slow down a little bit? Because it's all kind of made up and it's not that good. And that better problem for them is they're really focused on it. How do you kind of, or what have you seen that was starting to help with that bridge between sort of the early majority and the late majority of potential adopters of these tools and tech?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Jane. Here is what I've noticed is happening in the industry, right? And there is no right or wrong here. Like, I'm just sharing what I'm observing. I'm observing pretty much every organization. This is across industries, not just healthcare, life sciences, across industries, right? Everyone is excited about this technology. Again, why? Because it is bringing cognitive, is like an assistive technology, like
Right.
eyeglasses that we wear, the cane that we use, right, to walk, the braces that we use, right, to kind of keep our shoulder or arm or back straight, right? I mean, it is an assistive technology, only it is assistive intelligence technology, right? So everyone is curious about it. So in every organization, what I'm noticing is there's a lot of divergence initially as people try to touch and feel this in their own ways to kind of figure out and make sense of it. Once that diversion happens, mature organizations very quickly start to think about how do we start converging again, so that dilution of technology, budget, effort, and attention does not happen across their organizations, right? The mature companies are also doing one more thing, right? They are always thinking about this as an iterative a fashion where Gen AI adoption or agentic AI adoption is going to happen in waves, and that wave is going to correlate their own readiness at an enterprise level. And if you try to ever mismatch that, that is where you come across POC sprawls that eventually stall. It's a very interesting pattern I've noticed in the last 2 years, right? Oh, let's do XYZ. You build, you put all the builders, you get to the finish line, and guess what? Business has not been trained on agentic AI, on Gen AI. And so they go like, what do you mean? We have this workflow, we have the single pane of glass where everything happens. And now you're telling me to swivel in my chair to kind of use this new shiny thing you have made.
Right.
So how do you expect me to copy paste? My point is so that is a classic example of a business process that did not change. That's a classic example for someone not paying attention to what is a day in the life of the business user. How do they do things today? And who's going to coach them, train them, upskill them on this new technology? So that's where I see those disconnects happening. What I have come to understand is, some of the best our customers, right, who are actually moving in a very uniform fashion across this journey. They always start with vision. Once they get the vision, and I'm not just talking about sending out email campaigns or come to town
Right.
halls. I'm talking about people who are going to own the vision, live with the vision, get comfortable getting into very difficult conversations and still say, no, this is the right thing to do, even if it is not perfect. Let's celebrate the success. Let's learn from this failure and move forward. Once they tackle vision, then they start focusing immediately on culture. That is people. How do you upskill people? How you educate them? How do you kind of take away the fear of job loss? How do you kind of help everyone understand, right? And this is one of my favorite analogies that I heard from a customer. When ATMs first came years ago, a lot of people thought a bank teller's job is gone. But what people did not realize is it freed the tellers from undifferentiated effort. And guess what those tellers are today? All those tellers' job roles got graduated into a wealth management experts. So they
Right.
offer a much higher value of service. Banks have started to scale across different geographical areas. So their volume of money management itself improved. My point is, everyone's life improved with the ATMs, right? But when it was first introduced, everyone had a very myopic view of, oh, the world has come to an end, teller jobs are done. Why did they bring this technology? So I think
Right. What are people going to do if they can't, handle the little tube in, your car, all that stuff? I mean, that's so
exactly.
I think that's a really good analogy. There's this kind of fear of the unknown. And I love starting with a vision and then moving toward culture as kind of the two biggest sort of first or biggest rocks really to be trying to think through. And I guess the other piece of this is the trust that this is actually, either there are two different flavors of trust. It's safe, like me doing this isn't going to somehow go somewhere on the internet, which seems to be a pretty consistent fear that people are going to have their, query kind of public or whatever, and the answer potentially public. The other is about the sort of safety, security, accuracy, safety. Like, is this going to be okay if I use the answer I got from this tool for my, presentation to my management or for whatever, right? How do I know for sure that I got the right information when I use the tool that's been built for me? So think of, I guess, in that realm, both flavors of safety, security, accuracy, I guess, security. How are you guys tackling that at AWS? I mean, I think you guys probably set the bar for a lot of these things. So where are you headed in that realm?
So see, that's a very interesting conversation, right? Two, three chain of thoughts over there, right? LLMs, Gen AI, Agentic AI, and I don't even know what else will start evolving very
Right.
rapidly in the foreseeable future. What will not change is the need for security, governance, observability, and access control. In fact, when software development itself has become a variable cost,
Right.
because of vibe coding, right? That basically means everyone will try to move very fast. And when you move very fast and scale very quickly, things always break. That's just a reality, right? So that's the
Keeps
kind of
everybody
problem.
in a job security when it comes to code, right?
Exactly. So that's the kind of bigger problem that AWS and Amazon has always taken a pride in trying to solve, right? A lot of our customers trust us for enterprise scale applications and solutions, and that's pretty much where we continue to focus our energy. We are thinking about how do we kind of get the right enterprise AI platform for organizations. So if you look at what we have done with Agent Core, for example, right, that is exactly the same thing. We are not trying to come out and say, oh, there is only one LLM to do all your job. We are not trying to come in and say there's only one kind of GPU that will do all the job, right? Similarly, we're not saying there is only one agentic AI framework that will do the job. We are saying customers are going to need choices. Customers are going to need options. And what we want to do is, as they experiment and as they scale, we want to provide them with security, governance, observability, and access control in anything they try to. Here is the question that I keep asking all my customers, right? You're excited about Gen AI and agentic AI. Let's say you go build thousands of these, across your organization. You truly want to embrace the future. All power to you. Just help me answer one thing. Where are you going to go and hang all these solutions? How are you going to make sure the right people and the right agents have access to minimum amount of data to do their job so that you can ensure security and guardrail, against malicious intents and cyber risk? And those are the
Yeah.
kind of problems that we are focusing on trying to solve right now.
And I think it's interesting because my hunch is, as many things with AWS, right? This is a problem that you already had at Amazon to deal with because you're developing things internally and you want to make sure that they're secure and that you're storing them properly. And all that. So like most of the things, I think they come out of a necessity for basically operating your own business, and then you realize that you're not the only ones that have this problem. So it's kind of a neat, I think, opportunity to see where the AWS platforms, obviously where they come from and then where they go in terms of where people use them. And I think I just totally love the idea of the flexible and swappable piece. That's something that's kind of one of the things Improzo is really passionate about as a company, is that it shouldn't really matter which stack you choose. I mean, obviously there's some that have maybe more features that are more aligned with what you're trying to do, but if you decide that one of the LLMs is a good fit today, and then say 6 months from now, a different LLM comes out that's even better for what you're trying to do, it shouldn't have to be this like, missed opportunity. There should be a way to kind of continually evolve. And to me, that is actually the big difference here, maybe than some of the other technology we've seen over the years, where there has sort of been a consensus, if you will, like this is the answer, everybody use this one. That I think it's going to take a lot longer for that to finally happen, if at all, right? Because there's so many different
Absolutely.
disparate ways that you might use this tech, that having these different flavors, and even the idea of doing vibe coding, I've started playing with that myself a little bit, because my my coding background is more like SQL and SAS, and it's a little dated. But what's cool is I don't necessarily need to learn Python. I can kind of, or JSON or whatever the format of whatever it is I'm trying to do, because it's able to kind of use my words, and then I can at least interpret it enough to be like, that's what I meant. That's what I was intending. Right. So it's this idea of how does the technology evolve over time, and how quickly can you adapt to it, and like languages, whatever it is. Right. And that to me is going to change fundamentally this idea of being this 10-year deep expert in one way of working or one software type. That probably won't make as much sense as we move forward, right? It's going to be about that flexibility and swappability, if you will, of the tech as it evolves. So it's very different. And then
Absolutely.
obviously security too, right? Like how do you secure all these different new things that keep coming?
Plus one. I love vibe coding, right? Here is my mental model. We have evolved from trying to understand the language of the hardware, the computer, to having the computer now understand our language.
Yeah, it's
So
true.
that's basically the evolution that we are going through and experiencing, right? So yeah, I mean we are now all of a sudden going. I don't know if you've read the latest Wall Street Journal article about Amazon finance team already starting to use a lot of Gen AI, agentic AI for our own internal workflows now. It's an amazing article, and I'll share the link for you to share with
Yeah,
your
we can put it below. That's
yeah,
perfect.
with your viewers, right? So that was really amazing, right? So what they're doing is they're doing everything the Amazonian way, only doing it much faster.
Right. Well, and I
So
think that's the one of the reasons Amazon has had such success and dominance, is just that way of thinking about beginning with the end in mind and all of that. I mean, that's what allows you to be so successful. I think it's interesting to apply the mindset now, not just the software, but also the thinking to different business problems, especially in a sort of sector like healthcare, where mindset is a slow moving thing, right? There's just and some of that is for good reason, because there's this element of really needing to verify with a lot of work to say for sure, for example, that this is a safe and efficacious, medicine to give to people. So like that's the foundational thing that pharma is all about. So of course that tends to kind of be part of the ethos of whatever we're building or doing, even if it is a tech thing. So I think that security plus flexibility is a fascinating tension that probably will be something we'll have to talk about again another time, I think. This has been such a great conversation. I have so enjoyed the just the level of insight you can bring from your perspective at AWS, and the Amazon Connect, the Agent Core. There's so many really amazing products that are coming out to help people kind of make sense of this new space. So I think that to me is exciting, and I think something like Improzo, where we're trying to use AI and focus it on healthcare, is another kind of interesting angle that I'm finding people are interested in now, in a way that the podcast is hopefully helping people learn. So thank you again so much, Indy, for your time today, for this conversation. I know I learned several new things. I'm sure our listeners will too. I'll give you the last word. Any other thoughts you want to share about AWS's world, or maybe tips for people as they're thinking about getting into this generative AI space in healthcare?
No, first of all, Jane, thoroughly enjoyed this dialogue today, right? I think this was really amazing. I'll share two, three things, right? Here is one of my biggest pet peeves, right? Is when I come across customers who are saying, "Hey, help us create an AI strategy," and I'm going like, "Are you here to become an AI expert?" From what I know, you're in the business of patient care or discovering and commercializing
Right.
molecules to improve healthcare outcomes, right? So you don't necessarily need an AI strategy. What you need is an execution plan for how AI can help you achieve your existing business strategy, right? Because that's what should be
Yep.
sacrosanct. That should be the North Star. AI is just the tool that will do the job. But I think there is some confusion in the industry where everyone is going after, hey, what is my AI strategy? And I'm going like, no, worry about your revenue,
Right.
cost of sales,
Right.
right? Worry about new
Unless you're becoming
market.
an AI company, which is a whole different
Unless
ballgame,
you're
right?
becoming an exactly.
Right.
So that's one thing I like to tell everyone, right? Please focus on the execution, because if everything else is going to be done by AI with agentic AI, including software, right? And the only thing that will differentiate you and allow you to go through this transformation journey is your execution muscle, right? And that's where partners like yours actually also come into play, because sometimes you have that execution muscle, sometimes you need to borrow that execution muscle. So I think that becomes very important. And also, I'm sure everyone has heard about the MIT report recently that talked about 95% of the applications, Gen AI applications, actually not going anywhere, right? I wish the title was more around the 5% that are succeeding. And those 5% are actually doing what Amazon Finance is doing, right? And that Wall Street Journal article that I
Yeah.
spoke about, they're focusing on internal use cases. Why do you do that? Internal use cases allow you a safe space, right? To experiment, to fail, to learn, while putting that organizational guardrails. Your people on both sides of that use case are all internal employees. So you're growing, you're helping upskill, reskill employees, and there is no reputation damage. So focusing on those internal use cases, and instead of doing hundreds of those, pick up 5, scale it across on all that internal employee base, right? You will learn 2 things. You will learn how Gen AI can do things differently. You will learn how to tame and scale this technology as well. And I
That's
think
an
that's
amazing
another
tip.
thing a lot of people are missing out. But
Yeah, no,
I
that's
think,
really helpful. And then the only other thing I want to make sure we don't forget to say is that you've got reInvent coming up, right? Can you speak to that real
yes,
quickly?
yes,
Yeah,
absolutely, right. Listen, we're going to be at reInvent. So would you guys be? If anyone wants to meet there, please start getting in touch on LinkedIn. And yeah, I'm looking forward to even more announcements on what we are trying to do and how do we see the space evolving and what our customers have already been doing with us through 2025 now.
that's awesome. Thank you so much for that invitation, of course. And I think it's a great set of conversations to be had. So with that, thank you again so much for stepping into the Impro Zone with me. And we'll catch everybody next time on our next episode. Thanks again so much,
Absolutely.
Indy. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Take care.
This has been the ImproZone, improving life, empowering customers. Follow us and stay tuned for what's next.